Let's say you've got an important presentation coming up in the next couple of weeks, and you'd like to look at some examples of good storytelling techniques for inspiration. Maybe you want to take a look at some examples of good narrative structuring, or a striking visual that was used, or maybe a great way somebody opened their presentation, maybe with an analogy, maybe with a personal story, or maybe with an evocative quote. And you want to look at these examples online. Sure, you can ask Google, but you'll get a lot of clickbaity headlines, not really useful. And if you ask ChatGPT, a generic question will give you a generic answer. And to be able to ask a very specific question, you need to know a lot of techniques of storytelling. So it's kind of, a catch-22 situation. So which is why I thought that there is a need for a hub, a place on the web where somebody who understands this stuff is curating a lot of examples of good storytelling from a diverse set of sectors and making it easy to search. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited to announce the formal launch of my new website, www.storyrules.com, the prime attraction of which is going to be the Story Rules Content Hub. Now, what is the Story Rules Content Hub? So the way I look at it, the Story Rules Content Hub aims to be the best place on the web to learn about storytelling techniques at work, right? So how does that work? So let's take a look at the website. And so you go and then you click on the Content Hub, you reach this page. And now there are multiple ways in which you can search for the content, right? The content is right below, various posts and podcasts and newsletters, etc. But let me talk to you about the easiest way to search. If you know specifically which post you're looking for, let's say you remember that, hey, Ravi wrote some post about R. Ashwin, the Indian cricketer. Then all you have to do is hit the search and type Ashwin, right? And there it is. Immediately the post will come. Or let's say you want to, Ravi had written something about Ikigai. So Ikigai, and there we go, right? The post that I wrote about Ikigai. So this is the easiest one if you know specifically what you're searching for. But sometimes you're not so sure what is it that you're searching for, which is where these filters come in. Now, what do these filters mean? Now, for you to be able to understand these filters, I'm going to take you back to the presentation and try and explain how this was built, right? So the idea of this hub is that there are various good examples of storytelling, which I've been curating and collecting over the last many years. And you as a user should be able to find these diverse examples in one place very easily, right? So that was the idea. And so to be able to do this, one useful thing for you to know is how have I built this? So I've built it or tagged it using the ultimate guide to storytelling techniques. So this is something that I had released last year, sometime in March, where it was always kind of plaguing my mind that, hey, I talk about so many storytelling techniques, but where does it all fit in? Can I see it all fitted in one slide? And so this was my attempt to do that. And you can of course take a look at this post, but today I'm going to try and recap this ultimate guide to storytelling techniques and tell you how it all fits in when you search the Content Hub. So in this framework, I've basically taken several storytelling techniques, more than 50 actually, and then try to look at what are the ways in which we can classify them. So one angle or one way in which you can classify them is, what does the tool achieve? What is the objective of the storytelling tool, right? So it could be to make the audience understand what you're trying to say quicker and easier. It could be to make them engaged, from disengaged, disinterested to being more engaged. It could make them care. They may not be really bothered about what you're trying to tell them, but this set of tools will make them care for what you want to tell them. And finally, it will make them trust, believe, and hopefully act on what you're trying to tell them, right? So this is kind of, a ladder of objectives that any storyteller is trying to achieve. And in order to do that, how does the tool achieve? So there are some techniques around this. So sometimes the tool achieves it by making the content clear and comprehensive, by adding element of surprise, by piquing the audience's curiosity, or by making it relatable and familiar, by making the audience feel for the information, for the people behind it, or to reframe it and show the value, and by removing doubt, addressing the issues of doubt and fear. So these are all about, what does it achieve and how does it achieve that? And the other axis to look at is in what part is it really used, right? So I think of storytelling as building multiple layers of a cake. So at the foundation, you've got something and then you build on top of it, right? So building requires you to know the narrative. What is the narrative or the words that you're going to be using? How do you then use the right pictures? And how do you prepare to deliver, right? So narrative, visuals, and delivery are the three layers of the storytelling cake. But the foundation is very important, right? So that is where all story tools start, which is knowing your audience, knowing the right metrics, knowing the right data. And so there are some techniques around this. Now what I'm going to do is to quickly run you through the storytelling techniques that are a part of this ultimate guide, and then later we'll talk about how does it feature in the content hub, right? So around making the audience understand, you've got stuff like adding clear messages, using the 6W1H, which is a set of questions to answer, the pyramid principle, word choice, patterns, bunch of other techniques there. A lot of techniques around surprising the audience, primarily being norm and variance, and I've written a lot about this. Techniques around curiosity, especially the 7C's framework is a cool one to retain the curiosity of the audience while you tell them the story of your product or your company. Making numbers relatable. That's a brilliant book, by the way, written by Chip Heath around this. So I've used a lot of techniques around that from that book. Making the audience care by making them empathize, humanize the subject, appeal to the emotions. Asking so what is a great way to show the audience the value that, why should they care about that particular event or activity or metric. And then there are some bunch of techniques around addressing doubt and fear. These mostly come from the work of the book called Persuasion, right? So these are all the techniques that are available in terms of the narrative. Then there are, of course, techniques around visuals. Show, don't, just tell, right? So that's like a blanket technique that you can use across the board. And then there are, more tactical elements like, the right charts, making the visual stand out, using visual hierarchy, using animation, like I'm doing right now. Then there's a bunch of stuff around delivery, right? So this is basically the ultimate guide to storytelling techniques. As you can see, I'm numbered at version 2.9 on 4th November. This will keep changing, right? So this is basically as it is. Now, what I've done is to take individual elements of it, like the objective, like the story techniques, like these, where to use the tool, and incorporated them in the content hub. So if you look at these filters, the first one is objectives, right? So this goes back to what is the objective? Do you want to make the audience understand, engage them, make them care, make them trust, believe, and act, or not necessarily knowing of the objective? So if you're not sure, just keep it unselected. The story tools, this is a tricky one, right? And you'll find many tools. Basically all the tools that I've just talked about, and it might take you some time to get used to it. This is actually honestly something that I plan to use a lot. If somebody asks me about saying, hey Ravi, can you give me a good example of the use of analogies? So I will know, okay, I need to go to familiarity, I have to look at analogies, and I have 29 examples there. So that will help me. And so that's there. In addition, you've got the story tool categories, which is nothing but knowing that, okay, it could be narrative, it could be visuals, or it could be delivery, and each of those will have a role to play. So that's basically it in terms of, the different types of storytelling techniques that are there. The fourth one is a content type, and let me kind of go back and show you what do I mean by content type. So there are different types of content that I've used in the content hub. There is a general post that I have, which is, typical post that I've written. Soon there will be a different category here known as a long form post. I'm planning to write some long form content, quite excited about that. Then last year I did many mini posts, which I called as SOTD, hashtag SOTD, which is story of the day, where I would take some interesting example of storytelling and then share that on the website, and also tag which storytelling technique was used there, right? And this is how actually this whole exercise started. So there are about 100 posts, I think, give or take a few, around this SOTD. And so you'll find some interesting examples from all over, from sports, from politics, from, businessmen giving speeches, from presentations, etc. So a lot of good examples in the SOTD section. Then there's a podcast, and I've been talking to a lot of people, and lots of, people have talked about specific storytelling techniques in their interviews. So the podcast is there. Now this is not complete. I plan to add something known as a podcast nuggets, taking inspiration from Deepak Jayaraman and Play to Potential. Check out his website in case you haven't. And here what I plan to do is, divide the entire podcast conversation into smaller nuggets of pieces, and then each chunk would typically be for a specific storytelling technique, etc. And so that will also be useful. In addition, there's of course the newsletter. So I write a weekly newsletter called 321 by Story Rules, and some of them may have some storytelling techniques, so they may also be tagged. So that's basically the content type. And now if we kind of go back here, what you can do is say, okay, I want examples of making the audience engaged. I want it from SOTD, and I want, let's say we can talk about analogies. So I've got 14 examples of analogies, right? And this, as I was mentioning, it could be for the audience, for the narrative, for the visuals, for delivery, or multiple. So let's say I want for all, and I hit submit. There we go. So now not all of these would be relevant in your case, but at least you've got a good starting point, right? And you can look at each of these, and some of them might be, okay, not so great, but some might like really talk to you and say, oh, this is something that I can use, right? And so that is one cool way to use this hub, but I'm sure you'll find many other ways. So please go ahead and play around with this tool. It's something that is made for you, and please give me your feedback, your inputs, and your love. So if you like it, you can share and talk about it on social media. And I hope to continue to work on this and make it a useful tool for the time to come. Thank you so much.